I am blind. Yet by chance, I became the only witness to a murder in the neighborhood. The neighborhood guard spent the day continuously reminding residents through a loudspeaker to stay alert, and Bart even called me to advise that I'd better not go out lately. I dismissed it and hung up. My husband Sam wrapped me in his arms from behind, nuzzling my neck and shoulders like a kitten. I told him I still wanted to have a child of my own. He said, "Okay." But the one holding me now was not Sam. Sam and I have been married for 6 years, and he has never once called me wife. The child was also the fuse that ignited the argument between us that night. He shouted hoarsely, "Ivy, I don't want children. How could you be pregnant? I can't provide a comfortable life for you and the baby right now. I don't want him to suffer because of me. I can't have a child with you." I grabbed my guide dog Dodo and rushed out the door. Outside, the rain was pouring down. I held the umbrella carefully, protecting the precious little life I had. With nowhere to go, I wandered back and forth around the neighborhood. When I returned, the house was already empty. The next day, I was woken by the ringing of my phone. It turned out that a murder had occurred at the corner of the neighborhood that night. Bart checked the neighborhood surveillance and found that I was the only witness who had entered that alley. That day, Bart called again. The killer goes by the nickname Rainy Judge, delivering justice on behalf of heaven. Moving from place to place, he specifically targets unrepentant criminals during rainy weather. If you recall any clues, be sure to contact us. For your safety, it's best not to go out recently. I kept repeating my words over and over. Bart, I'm blind, I can't see anything. It was raining so hard at the time, and there was music playing on my phone, I couldn't hear a thing. There's nothing I can provide you. Suddenly, a pair of hands wrapped around my waist from behind, and a voice whispered in my ear, "Honey, what are you doing?" My heart skipped a beat, and I decisively hung up the phone. Tears streamed down my face as I patted his chest hard, feeling wronged. "Sam, where have you been? You haven't answered your phone these past few days. Are you starting to play hide and seek with me?" He grabbed my hand and nervously pulled me into his arms. His voice was low and gentle. "Sorry, honey, for making you worry. I was helping a friend with something last night. It won't happen again." I wiped my tears and smiled, turning to wrap my arms around his neck, leaning into his embrace. "You better keep your word, or I'll have our son teach you a lesson." He tilted his head, pressing it playfully against my belly. "Good boy, we'll protect Mom together from now on, okay?" "Silly." I looked at him with affection, teasing his childishness. A measured pace of speech, a playful voice, a height of 180 centimeters, a figure neither fat nor thin, bearing a 9/10 resemblance to Sam. And the scent of the perfume on him was exactly the same as Sam's. But I was certain he was not the husband I had lived with for 6 years. Because just today, I had killed Sam. He had killed my child. When I married Sam, my greatest wish was to have a child of my own. But after marriage, my belly remained silent. Every day, my mother-in-law Adeline, who used to care for me tenderly, began to mock me. Poor my son, marrying a hen that can't lay eggs, shamelessly clinging to him, unable to shake her off. Cheap goods never last, truly cursed for 8 generations. Every time Adeline spoke, I just pretended not to hear, her words stuck in my throat like a bone. I had been to the hospital for a checkup, the doctor said it was my problem. But Sam didn't take it seriously and comforted me with a light tone. "Ivy, I don't mind whether you can have children or not. Actually, I think it's nice not having kids to disrupt our lives. We can enjoy our time as a couple and build more memories between you and me. Right now, I already feel very happy." Listening to Sam's comforting words, I lowered my head in silence, overwhelmed with guilt. In this world, besides him, I had no one to rely on. He was my everything, my lifeline. At 6 o'clock, Sam came back. For the first time ever, he had prepared chicken soup for me at the neighbor's house. At the dinner table, holding the soup carefully, I said to him, "Sam, this might be my last chance to be a mother." He remained silent. "If you really don't want the child, I can divorce you." I only want this child. Sam still didn't speak. I put down the chicken soup and stood up. Only then did Sam grab my hand, his tone chillingly calm. I don't want this child. Sam, I can leave you, and I don't need you to support him. Whatever you ask for, I will fulfill it. I just want this child. Besides, your mother has been longing for a grandson. Please don't take away my chance to be a mother, okay? I held Sam's hand, begging him desperately. After speaking, I turned to leave, wanting to escape this space. Fear welled up inside me. My intuition told me he couldn't accept this child. But Sam blocked my way. Ivy, do you think you deserve to be a mother? If it weren't for you framing me back then, why would I have married you? You're an unfaithful woman. Do you deserve to have my child? The thought that his body might be flowing with your blood makes me feel filthy. Those things you did you really think I didn't know everything? How were you raised? Do I still need to remind you? You truly have no shame at all, not a shred of self-awareness. The thunderbolt struck me dumb on the spot. My mind went completely blank. Tears burst forth uncontrollably, crashing heavily against my chest like broken strings, burning fiercely as if set aflame, aching with raw pain. It felt as if a sharp claw was tearing my internal organs, pulling them alive out of my body. I sensed my body beginning to gush blood, then chunks of flesh falling away. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness hit me, and I collapsed to the ground. I clung to my body like a madwoman, desperately gathering what lay on the floor into my arms. This was the child I had longed for. I just wanted to piece this blood and flesh back together. At this moment, it felt as if I had returned to the moment of my birth, when a nurse held my tiny foot and slapped it, yet I couldn't cry out. If only I hadn't cried then. If only that had never happened, none of this would have come to pass. Sam looked on indifferently at my hysteria. There was even a faint smile on his face. The sticky fluid on my hands burned my brain, and I lost control, rising abruptly to grab a fruit knife from the table. I aimed it precisely at Sam's heart. 1 strike, 2 strikes, until I was utterly exhausted. When I came to my senses, I stumbled back into the apartment across the hall, frantically scrubbing the blood off my body. After cleaning everything up, I curled up on the sofa, clutching the warmth of a blanket to reclaim a shred of safety. Pressing my hand to my chest, I struggled to steady my breathing, only to realize the door had quietly opened. The killer had come. He nestled against my shoulder, his arms locking me tightly in place. My heart seemed to stop beating, my body frozen, momentarily forgetting to breathe. Was he here to silence me? But if so, why didn't he act on that street in the neighborhood? What exactly did he want? Was he just testing me? Countless possibilities flashed through my mind. I kept telling myself to stay calm. The most important thing now was to find a chance to escape. Suddenly, the hand I had reached out with was burned. It was hot water. I instinctively pulled back, crying out in pain. The assailant put down the cup, lifted me from the sofa, walked around the bedroom, and headed to the bathroom, holding my hand under the faucet to rinse it. His voice was reproachful yet gentle. "Honey, I'm sorry, you scared me to death. Why did you suddenly reach out like that? This is hot water. What if I hadn't held it steady and spilled it all over you?" My intuition told me that the hot water was just the killer testing me. Bard said this rainy judge specifically targets unrepentant criminals. And the person in the alley of the neighborhood was the scum who once killed his own sister to commit insurance fraud. I could only hope that someone with such a strong sense of justice would harbor a bit of compassion for the weak. I forced a faint smile, then my mouth turned downward in grievance as I said, "Sam, I'm sorry. Do you despise me now?" I'm sorry, I just can't see." My voice grew softer and softer, yet every word was clear. Then I resolutely raised my hand to rest on his shoulder, while the other hand clutched tightly at the hem of his clothes. Tears poured down like rain. "Sam, please don't leave me, okay? You promised me you'd stay with me for life. You know, you're all I have left in this world. Please don't despise me, okay? I'll try not to trouble you anymore. I've already learned how to cook, and from now on, I'll make meals for you every day." My voice trembled, like a child about to cry, desperately showing that only he could keep me alive. I waited for his reply. 1 second, 2 seconds. My heart clenched in my throat, and I couldn't stop sobbing. The tears were nearly dried up. "All right, I don't despise you." He cupped my tear-streaked face and lowered his head. His touch was light, like a dragonfly skimming the water, so gentle. I felt like a precious treasure cradled in his palm, afraid I might shatter. Through psychological analysis and examination of the crime scene, the police deduced that the killer was a man aged 20 to 30, well-educated, with a broken family background in childhood, and an intense psychological need to be needed, relied upon, and recognized. Lack of love is the shackle attached to him, and also my escape key. "Fool, we've been married so long, how are you still so unskilled?" He leaned close to my ear, his voice as light as a feather. I smiled and tilted my head up, reaching out to touch his face, tracing from his eyebrows to his eyes, nose, and mouth, trying hard to imprint his features in my heart. "Sam, then you give me the chance to teach me for a lifetime." "Okay." Then came another flurry of touches until I was almost suffocating before I made a sound, "All right, I can't catch my breath." He breathed warm air into my ear, chuckled softly, brushed my nose, and then let go of me. When we got married, Sam treated me just as gently. I am an orphan, a blind woman, and a somewhat accomplished voice actor. Since I was young, I have loved imitating all kinds of voices, finding a trace of peace amid the noise. With my voice, I can shape a character's personality, emotions, background, even every subtle expression on their face. Over the years, I've also built up quite a network in this field, which is one of the reasons Sam was able to marry me. "Ivy, I believe in you. You're destined to become a star in this industry. Soon, the leading ladies in all the major films will be voiced by you. When that happens, I'll quit my job, and our whole family will travel the world together. The world is so vast. I'll read the descriptions to you, be your eyes. You'll be the heroine in the world of film, but only be my heroine." All the woven sweet words now mock the present with bared fangs and clawing gestures. He held me like pressing a leaf hard under water. "Ivy, I love you. After you ran out that night, do you know how worried I was? I was afraid of losing you. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I won't leave you again, nor will I let you leave me." I sneered inwardly. Sam would never love me. The killer had observed my life with Sam but didn't know that Sam's love was not for a woman. After we got married, Sam insisted on buying the house across the street, saying it would be convenient for his parents to come live with us, for my sake, to reduce mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts. The first time I learned to cook, I happily went to find Sam, who was working hard next door. "Sam, do you like me or your wife? Jealous? How can you compare to her? I love you. You're the only wife I have. But back then, you neglected her, just going through the motions. And look at you now, you actually got her pregnant. Could it be that the fake act turned real, and you fell in love? If I didn't act that way, she'd get suspicious. The pregnancy was an accident. Next time, I'll be more generous. I'll make it up to you properly. Did you miss me? Around that blind woman, I think about you day and night." Sufing suddenly became reserved. But Sam suddenly grabbed her forcefully. "The neighbors will hear us." "Don't worry." "So what if she hears? She's blind and can't see. We're just working out. What's the big deal?" I knocked and walked over to the sofa. The sound stopped abruptly. "Ivy, let me introduce you, this is my brother Sufing." Clearing his throat, Sufing replied, "Ivy, hello, I'm Sufing, Sam's good friend. Why did you come over? We haven't seen each other in a long time." "I'm working out now, I'll come over in a bit." "Sufing, let's switch to another machine." Memories from the past flooded in like a torrent. But the man's words pulled me back to reality. "Honey, tell Bart, it was pouring rain that night, and you didn't hear anything, right?" My heart tightened, and I blurted out, "Yeah, why?" The man's finger gently brushed across my face. That night, Dodo was shouting so loudly, "Didn't you listen carefully? Did you really hear nothing?" He leaned down. "Ivy, you heard everything, didn't you?" "Yes, that night, I heard it." As I stepped into the alley, I heard the killer's voice. The moment Dodo, the guide dog, barked the first time, I knew something was wrong in the alley. Having done voice acting for years, I recognized the sound of a knife piercing flesh and then being withdrawn. Fortunately, I always keep dog food in my coat pocket. I crouched down, picked up Dodo, and tucked him inside my coat to calm him. I knew that if I turned and walked away, the killer would surely become suspicious, and that would be a dead end for me. I had no choice but to pretend nothing was wrong. "Dodo, my darling, it's all my fault. You think I'm too stubborn, don't you?" I shouldn't have argued with him. "I've made things hard for you. Let's go back early, okay?" Following the music playing from the phone speaker, it was like stepping into an alley. I started humming along. My white cane tapped the ground, but the sound wasn't as crisp as before. I knew it was blood sticking to it. A gust of wind blew, carrying the scent of blood. I wrapped my clothes tighter around me. I sensed the killer nearby, motionless, staring intently at me. A faint sound of coughing up blood reached my ears. Hearing the man's words, my heart clenched. At that moment, all I could do was hold myself tightly. Almost hysterically, I said, "Sam, yes, I know the killer is there, but what do you want me to do? Our lives are just starting to get better, and I don't even have a lovely baby yet. What do other people's business have to do with me? I'm not afraid of dying, but I don't want to die. I don't want to cause you trouble, or make you hate me even more. Besides, that person is wicked, and someone is acting as heaven's justice. Why should I meddle in it?" The man leaned over to grab my hand. I shook him off resolutely, my voice trembling. "Sam, if you think I'm despicable, then go ahead and report me to the police." I made my position clear one last time. "Sam, I don't regret lying to the police." I stood up trembling and started to walk out. Just as I was about to reach the door, about to touch the doorknob, I saw a glimmer of hope. A man's hand grasped mine. Then I collided with a solid chest, my nose stinging painfully. "Wife, don't be like this. I was wrong. I just feel sorry that you have to face this alone. I'm angry at myself for not being able to share the burden with you. I didn't know if my words had eased the assailant's vigilance toward me, or if they were just meant to lower my guard." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Then came a series of urgent knocks. "Ivy, are you home? Ivy." I heard the voice. He was Sam's boyfriend, Sufeng. The man let go of my hand and straightened my clothes. "You go open the door." After saying that, he turned and went into the bedroom. I felt a bit relieved and opened the door. But it was suddenly slammed open, followed by Sufeng grabbing my shoulder and shouting loudly. "Ivy, where's Sam? Why isn't he answering his phone or replying to messages? Did you hide him? Look at yourself in the mirror first." Still dreaming about having a child with Sam. I wanted to tell him the killer was inside the house, but Sufeng was yelling like a mad dog. Afraid something might happen, I could only frown and say Sam wasn't here. Sufeng's tone softened, and with a triumphant air he said, "Ivy, I'm not afraid to tell you, Sam and I have been together for 9 years, and he never loved you. A child? Dream on. We won't let you bear a child with filthy blood. If you know what's good for you, just behave and stop clinging to Sam all the time. I once believed that Sam loved me. You were a promising prospect the moment I laid eyes on you, so I had Sam pursue you. The day before college started, that was your first time at a bar, right? Sam took you there. That night was also your first time. That was my charity to you. It was my first time and also Sam's birthday. I remember I only had one drink before I passed out. When I woke up, Sam was holding my hand, kneeling by the bed, slapping himself wildly. Ivy, I'm sorry. I drank too much last night and was so confused I don't know what happened. Hit me if you want, I'm no good. I'll take responsibility for you. You don't know how hard Sam tried to make it up to me after that time with you. Looking at Sufeng's smug face, I felt a wave of nausea. Alright, this is your own choice. I said calmly, Sam is in the bedroom. Then I stormed out, slamming the door behind me. The moment the door shut, I heard the sounds of a struggle inside. I didn't have time to think further. I pressed the elevator button, then dashed down the stairs with all my might, calling the police on the phone around my neck as I went. Just as I missed a step and was about to fall, a pair of hands caught me. Ivy, what's wrong? It was Bart's voice. Bart, how did you get here so fast? Oh, I was just patrolling nearby. As soon as I got your call, I came right over. You said the killer wants to kill you, so you should go hide first. I'll check out your place. Bart led me across several streets and then took the elevator. While he was entering the code, I quickly pressed my fingerprint on the door opposite. He wasn't Bart. The place he took me to was my home. Just as I was about to close the door, he used his foot to firmly block the entrance. My strength was no match for his, and the door was forced open. I collapsed to the floor, shrinking back in fear, my heart sinking. Bart, what's wrong? I'm scared. Ivy, do you really not know who I am? I covered my mouth in terror. Ivy, you knew who I was the moment I answered you, the killer said, holding a knife as he drew closer, just like that night when he swayed before my eyes. Ivy, you're smart, sensitive to sound, but unfortunately, you're blind. Before he finished speaking, bright red blood gushed from the man's chest, and he collapsed, clutching the wound. His eyes were filled with terror and daze. You're not blind. I smiled faintly and leaned close to his ear. I never once said I was blind, Bart. That's right, I never said I was blind. Ever since the orphanage director hit my eyes with a tennis ball, causing temporary blindness, and until I was adopted, I became known as the blind girl in everyone's eyes. I never defended myself. The world of the blind is more fascinating than one might imagine. The killer kept watching me, and every day I deliberately went out at a fixed time to observe his movements. I made my fingers greasy, deliberately leaking the password. I listened as he repeatedly called me, pretending to be Bart. I chuckled to myself. He was constantly testing me. I watched as he placed hot water in front of me, and I deliberately reached out. I saw him touch my lips, a faint smile in his eyes, pressing a fruit knife against my neck. He tested me over and over, and I gradually dispelled his doubts. Being blind was the only condition under which I could be adopted. Before I turned 5, I was always the director's target. After losing my sight, I was suddenly adopted by a couple of voice actors. I was taught all kinds of vocal techniques, all to satisfy this couple's twisted obsession. In the 3rd month of marrying Sam, I watched as he openly started slipping birth control pills into my food. In the 2nd year of our marriage, I saw him bring a man home. Ivy, let me introduce you, this is my good brother. I sat on the sofa, calmly watching the two exercising on the floor. I got up to pour them some water. Don't overdo it, take a break and have some water. The two exchanged a smile, and Sam put in even more effort. They switched moves one after another. I began to believe that the blind man might be my best weapon. I was going to clean up all this filth, bit by bit. Opportunities always arrive quietly. That night, I saw him kill. I secretly rejoiced, humming a cheerful tune I usually wouldn't sing along to. Mixed with raindrops, I listened to the faint cries for help from the barely breathing person beside me. I was satisfied, it had been a long time since I heard such a heavenly sound. I carefully handled the corpse. The police deduced that the killer was a man aged 20 to 30, well-educated, from a broken family, and deeply yearning to be needed, relied upon, and recognized. Not much different from me, except they never expected the killer to be a woman. No, I am not the killer. I am merely an accomplice to Judge Rainey. I let the killer raise the stick, striking me again and again until my body was covered in wounds and I lay on the ground. When the police arrived, they saw me barely alive, covered in blood and flesh, alongside 3 corpses. After investigation, the truth gradually emerged. The killer had been secretly watching my family and had disturbingly disguised himself as my husband. After murdering my friend in my home, I fled to the opposite side. Just as I was beaten to the brink of death, my husband Sam, who had just returned home, fought with all his might to protect me, and in the end, they both perished. When I woke up, I confirmed their suspicions one by one. The murder case in the neighborhood finally came to a close.